The Day the Chickens Changed. By RDJ. I would wake up in the morning and one of the farm chores was to go feed the chickens, pretty regular stuff. Just go out to the coop, grab a pre-regulated amount of chicken feed and spread it around on the ground. Then I'd go and replace the 2 water dishes as well. Finally, I'd open the door and let them all out to eat and be outdoors all day. They were a pretty good bunch of chickens, not aggressive at all and for the most part pretty nice and very accustomed to human presence. However, this particular morning all was about to change. It was a late winter morning, not super cold but cold enough, we'd get little flurries. Winter's way of winding down, I guess. The chickens still came outside. If it's real cold they don't even bother coming out. They just huddle inside the coop. I grabbed my coat and boots, and went outside like usual. I grabbed some feed and opened their pen to spread it around like usual, but something just felt wrong. They usually make noise in anticipation of food, you know, cluck and cock-a-doodle-doo and stuff. But this time I only heard a couple clucks. It was strange. I spread out the feed and put down the feed buckets and went to open the door. Just as I opened the door, this rancid smell of what smelled like rot wafted across my face, then only a few chickens bolted out of the door in a flash. I opened the door fully and couldn't believe my eyes. All the chickens were still sitting down in a roosting position, barely moving, but they were all mostly covered with a thick goo. Like slime that was stringing from one to the next almost like a living spider's web strung across them all. It looked like it was pulsing up and down like it was breathing. I just stood back to get out of the smell and take it all in. What the hell was all this? I asked myself. I didn't know what I was dealing with inside the coop, so I turned around to take a look at the 3 that bolted out the door when I opened it. They were all very lethargic, moving slower than usual, looking around like this was a new place they'd never seen. But paying very close attention to me. It looked like they had some goo on them, but it had been worn off or something. Their eyes looked strange. They had a deep yellow to them now and they all seemed to have their beaks open a bit, making some eerie sounds constantly like an under-the-breath elongated cluck noise. They were losing feathers by the handful too, just falling off left and right. Their legs seemed decidedly bigger also. Just then, as I was still processing all this, they all formed a circle around me and started acting more aggressive. Walking towards me, staring and flapping their wings, feather getting thrown everywhere. They were pushing me back to the gate. I didn't feel like I wanted to get close enough to them to stop them because, whatever had done this or is doing this could transfer to humans, maybe. Either way, I didn't want to take the chance. So I carefully walked backwards until I opened the gate, closed it behind me and walked away slowly. The chickens outside were all by the fence just staring, making that low elongated cluck noise, just staring me down with their creepy yellow eyes. I decided to go back inside the house and try to get a better understanding of what all this was. A few hours went by and I couldn't find anything about this anywhere. No one had ever posted this or even knew what this was. It was getting later in the day and I had some stuff to do, so I decided to just keep an eye on them and see how it progressed. I was out of options really. The next day I woke up not knowing what to expect. I figured I'd better wear more layers and maybe bring a weapon. I don't know, a stick or something, just in case they got more aggressive than yesterday. I got suited up, grabbed my trusty Louisville slugger from behind the door. I stopped and kind of laughed under my breath. Really? I'm gearing up to go battle chickens? It was just about daylight, the sun was just pushing the last of the dark away. I opened the door with my bat and stood there looking at the coop, not know what to expect. I noticed there was no wind at all around here. That was weird. From a distance I could see the door was still open from yesterday and there was a lot of feathers strewn about all over the ground. I mean a lot. It looked like the feathers were spilling out of the door of the coop also. But no chickens, they must all be in the coop still. I slowly started walking off the back porch, clutching my bat tightly in my hands, looking around like I was in a war zone. Hyper aware of every little movement. This morning wasn't about feeding the chickens, it was about what happened to them. As I got closer, a putrid smell emanated from the coop's direction. I pulled up my sweater so it covered my nose. I started noticing red blotches all over the ground, randomly spread apart, almost like a battle had taken place. Looking closer, still taking small steps towards the coop, I noticed what looked like to be chicken parts. A wing devoid of all feathers laying there. A deformed leg lay by the gate door. In and amongst the feathers I could see more chicken parts, more legs and more wings, even some torsos and heads. They all looked like they were torn apart in some gruesome war. Nothing like any chicken fight we ever seen. This was different, like something had ripped them apart limb from limb, like a rabid dog would. It was in no short terms a bloodbath. I took a deep breath and steadied my nerves trying to not mind the stench, then I opened the gate. It was quiet, I mean eerily quiet. I couldn't see inside the coop, just inside the door. I started walking very slowly over the feathers and strewn about chicken parts, keeping a close eye on the coop as I clutched my bat in my hands. Just then as I put my right foot down, a snap of a chicken bone broke the silence. I froze. Just then I heard this low gurgle coming from inside the coop, almost like a growl. I kept my eyes on the coop door. A loud boom happened and the coop shook a bit. What could be that heavy that would make the coop shake? There must be an animal in there that decimated the flock. I gripped my bat and took another step closer. The gurgle was still going on. It was turning more into a raspy growl like from an angry dog telling someone to back off. Immediately a huge dark figure whipped across the door's entrance to the other side of the coop, shaking it again. It was huge. Way bigger than a normal chicken. It looked to be the size of a German Shepherd or close to it. But it was more round and didn't look like a dog. I took one step closer and another snap of a bone broke under my foot. The thing moved again violently and shook the coop again. Clearly it was not impressed by my presence and wanted me gone. Just then it stepped into the coop door where I could see it. Clearly its attempts to ward me off didn't work, so it decided to take the offensive. What in the ever-loving? I could not believe what I was looking at. A large size, barely able to fit through the coop door. It came up to my waist, no feathers and barely resembled a chicken at all. What was its beak now had sharp teeth all around the outside, spiky and dripping with blood. Its neck must have shrunk and was thicker. Its head had spikes on it that were also bloodied. Its eyes were a dark illuminating yellow. The body was like a pit bull's, skin tight and muscles all over. Instead of wings it had large muscular arms with pincers on each end. It was snapping them loudly, staring intently at me. Its legs were 3 times that of a normal chicken covered in green scales. Its feet were that of a bald eagle's, it seemed, massive claws about 2 inches long and clearly razor sharp. The whole thing looked like it had taken a bath in blood, covered in entrails and shredded organs, dried and fresh blood all over it. It looked like it had destroyed many other living things in a very aggressive manner. The scales were starting to take over its whole body from the bottom up. More of the growling started and it hunched down like it was getting ready to jump. I stepped back with my bat in the air, still not believing what I was seeing. It jumped at me, pincers snapping, claws opened and fanged beak ready to kill. I just managed to get out of the way in time. One of its claws scraped my cheek. It landed on the ground as I spun around to face it. It got ready to lunge at me again. Just as it did, I swung the bat like never before. I hit it square on. I heard a loud growl and saw a puff of blood, missed out from where I hit it. It hit the ground and started jumping around on one leg. I must have heard it. It hopped around for a short while, then with surprising speed it ran for the fence and jumped it. I've never seen a chicken jump that far or high, but this was no longer a chicken. It hit the ground and ran into field, then into a patch of trees. I stood there collecting my thoughts and trying to breathe again. I looked over the desecrated chicken coop that once provided me with laughter, happiness and eggs. Now was a bloodied scene of death, gore and mutation. I just turned and walked back into the house. The next morning I awoke kind of groggy. My cheek was itchy, so I went to the bathroom to check what it was. Where I got scratched there was a goo all over it that looked to be alive.